Once upon a time, there was a rich and famous merchant who saw a unique chance to expand his trade. He traveled far away from home to a land of wild beasts and endless swamps. Few people gave that land much thought, but the merchant was enchanted by the land. He secretly bought as much of it as he could. It was there that he would build the seat of a new empire. The year was 1963. The merchant was Walt Disney, and the land was Florida. Disney was already an American icon by then, high off the success of his California-based theme park, Disneyland. But it was too far a trek for many Americans on the East Coast, which is why he resolved to build a bigger, better park on 27,000 acres of Florida swamp, close to new highways and an airport. But when Disneyland opened in California, seedy hotels and attractions set up just outside the park. Disney wanted his East Coast park to be more family-friendly. He needed control over who his neighbors would be in Florida. And with plenty of lobbying, he got it. In 1967, Claude Kirk, the first Republican governor in Florida since Reconstruction, signed off on the Reedy Creek Improvement Act, which made the new Disney complex a semi-autonomous district with 2 incorporated towns that it controlled. Since then, Walt Disney World outside Orlando has become the de facto capital of the Disney Empire, one of the largest employers in Florida and a political force defended by each of Florida's 4 governors in this century, all of them Republicans. Even when Disney was forced to pay millions in back wages by the Department of Labor, even as Florida part workers agitated for fair pay, the company got a pass. But all of that, more than half a century of preferential treatment for the happiest place on earth, is coming to a sudden and strange end, all because of a man with the biggest ambitions of all. You see, Walt Disney just wanted a fiefdom in Central Florida. But Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis wants much more.
This state is governed by the best interests of the people of this state, not by any one woke corporation. We're not going to let them take over the state.
Yes, Ron DeSantis has declared war on Mickey Mouse, surrounded by children, no less. And he did it in a way that's so authoritarian it's put Republicans across the country in his thrall, freshening up his front-runner status for the GOP presidential nomination. This month, DeSantis forced the GOP Florida legislature to open a special session in order to approve a new congressional map for the state. It only took them 2 days to pass a gerrymandered hodgepodge of districts provided by DeSantis. But the special session did not end. Instead, Republicans took up DeSantis' crusade against Disney, passing a bill to revoke the company's long-standing special tax district and throwing the future of private enterprise in Florida in doubt. They did this not because of Disney's labor practices, mind you, and not because Republicans hate tax breaks for corporations. It's just that their apparent priority is further marginalizing gays, lesbians, and transgender people and punishing anyone who gets in their way. Enter Disney, and more specifically, its political donations. The company has always spread the wealth around. In fact, Disney gives millions annually to Republicans and Democrats, including more than $100,000 to DeSantis PAC, to a DeSantis PAC since 2019. In 2020, Disney and its entities gave more than $10 million to Donald Trump's America First Action PAC. That's almost 9 times what Disney entities gave to Joe Biden. But last month, Ron DeSantis signed the Republicans' Don't Say Gay bill, limiting discussion of gender and sexuality in public elementary schools. And so, following backlash from employees, Disney employees, over the company's silence, Disney said it would halt all its political donations in Florida. DeSantis just couldn't let it go. He's never been one to rule with a spoonful of sugar, and everyone knows he just can't wait to be king. So DeSantis set about building a whole new world, cutting the state's largest employer of its privileges and signaling to bigots across the state and across the country, you've got a friend in me.
You're a corporation based in Burbank, California, and you're going to marshal your economic might to attack the parents of my state? We view that as a provocation, and we're going to fight back against that.
Yes, from the people who brought you there, cancelling Dr. Seuss. It's a new production. Cancel Disney before it turns your kids woke. Now, energized by the faux crusade, Republicans are suddenly reversing course on all of their most cherished principles.
If you decide to just become a woke corporation that does the bidding of your Democratic taskmasters, don't be surprised when you get clocked with a legislative 2x4. F around and find out.
You know, Disney stepping in saying, you know, in every episode now they're going to have, Mickey and Pluto going at it. Like, really?
Thank you for that image, Senator.
And when Republicans, they get back into power, Apple and Disney need to understand one thing. Everything will be on the table. Your copyright and trademark protection, your special status within certain states, and even your corporate structure itself.
Free markets? Not if they stop paying us their political tribute. Free speech? Not if we don't like what they say. Cancel culture? Not if we can cancel you first. Florida's lieutenant governor outright told Newsmax that the state could reverse course if Disney does what Republicans want it to do. Ah, the quiet part loud. And until then, they will attack the company with more rage and more lies and more laws. Like a pro-insurrection GOP congressman tweeting out pictures of the Disney logo with a hammer and sickle, and the son of Donald Trump posting photos of a little merman to Instagram saying this was where Disney was headed. This vilification of cartoons is a perfect extension of the lies and the violent anger that DeSantis and the Republicans have unleashed on school boards, on public health officials, on climate scientists, on election supervisors, librarians, all dehumanized as evil influencers, even vilely as groomers of children in conspiratorial, hateful speeches and posts that make Pizzagate and QAnon seem quaint. Disney is a massive corporation with outsized influence on our culture, and it should be accountable to all of us. But this is not accountability. This is a type of fascism. It's a show trial straight out of Stalin's Soviet Union. And there's a modern parallel too. Ron DeSantis is grasping for something Vladimir Putin has. Not just political power, but complete control over his state's corporations. All to further a far-right ideology centered around him and his fealty to quote-unquote traditional values. Just think about it. If Republicans can brainwash enough parents into believing that Disney is turning its children against them, what else will they believe? Who else will they demonize? This is a story full of cartoonish monsters and absurd bad guys, and it will not end happily ever after. Joining me now is Brandon Wolf, the press secretary of Equality Florida, and Democratic State Representative Anna Eskamani, whose Orlando area district is home to many Disney employees. Thank you both for joining me. Anna, let me start with you. Disney hasn't always been a good corporate citizen or a good employer. DeSantis and the Republicans say they're just taking away special tax breaks for Disney, something Democrats are generally for doing, but that's disingenuous, isn't it?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I'm one of the few elected officials in the state who's never accepted a donation from Walt Disney World or any of its subsidiaries because I don't think they've been good corporate actors when it comes to workers' rights, when it comes to different tax breaks. And I actually filed several amendments onto this bill, one to close corporate tax loopholes in the state of Florida, and it was ruled out of order. So this is not a genuine effort to create an even playing field for all of our businesses. This is about petty, punitive, and performative politics, and it sets an unsettling precedent, as you noted in your introduction, that if you challenge the status quo in a state like Florida, that you'll be punished for it.
It is very Viktor Orban-esque, Vladimir Putin-esque. And also on that note, Brandon, in 1996, religious conservatives started an 8-year boycott of Disney for having a, quote, anti-family homosexual agenda in its hiring and its broadcasting. This isn't new in some ways. Why has Disney been a target of homophobia for so long? And how is the current right-wing campaign different, worse?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And the truth is, LGBTQ people have been a target for a really long time. And Disney finds itself in a very challenging situation. Disney has LGBTQ cast members. It serves a huge population here in Central Florida and beyond. Magic Kingdom is actually the most visited tourist destination here in the United States. And so they are faced with this dilemma. How do we create a company that attracts the very best talent in the world? How do we create a business that opens its gates to everyone at the same time that we have a faction of the country that is willing to burn everything down in order to try to stop LGBTQ people from achieving progress or basic civil rights? This goes back a long way here in the state of Florida. We saw in the 1970s Anita Bryant led the Save Our Children campaign, which was aimed specifically at overturning non-discrimination policy for LGBTQ people. And in 2004, I was a sophomore in high school when George W. Bush campaigned for re-election, trying to weaponize same-sex marriage. And many of the same bigoted language and rhetoric was coming out then, that we were somehow, by existing, a threat to children. And the only way to stop our contagion from spreading was to censor conversations about us. That's the same thing that's fueling bills like the Don't Say Gay bill. It's the same thing that's fueling these protests against Disney. And by the way, it's the same thing that Governor Ron DeSantis is weaponizing in his desperate attempts to outflank Donald Trump to the right and build himself a platform to run for president.
But Brandon, how can the Republican Party be in favor of censorship? I thought they're the party of free speech. Oh, my word. Anna, on the one hand, Republicans are being pretty open in wanting to punish Disney. On the other hand, Anna, the way this is written, taxpayers in 2 Florida counties may be stuck with $1 billion in Disney's bond debt, lowering Disney debt and stiffing Florida taxpayers. Surely that has to be an own goal for the Republicans going into elections.
This is another example of when you legislate culture wars, you have all of these unknown consequences. And I also have to make something clear. It is not true that Disney is the only theme park that has a special taxing status. In fact, Universal Studios has 2 special taxing districts that are local that take property taxes and allows them to keep that within their geographical area. At least Reedy Creek was a separate tax that Disney paid itself to maintain those municipal services. And now, because of this effort to cancel Reedy Creek and Disney World, you are correct. Orange and Osceola County voters may very well see a tax increase paying for the municipal services that Disney can afford itself. And on top of that, you're also eliminating and absorbing their debt as local county officials.
And Brandon, just to come back to the issue we were talking about a moment ago, you are a survivor of the Pulse nightclub massacre in 2016, as you and I have discussed before. What is it like to be a gay man in Florida right now with the demonization of gay people, the grooming smears from DeSantis, his press secretary, top Republicans? And I wonder how, I have to ask the question, how likely is that to lead to violence and more hate crimes in that state under the fake cover of family values?
I speak for myself, and I think a lot of other LGBTQ people in the state when I say that things are scary right now. I moved from a little rural town on the West Coast to Orlando, Florida, because I was looking for a place to belong. I was looking for a safe space. And I get that safe space as a term has sort of been perverted and is used as a bludgeon against people to suggest that if you need one, then you must not be tough enough to face the world as it is. But for LGBTQ people, safe spaces are the lifelines we carve out for our communities and ourselves to avoid discrimination, bigotry, and violence. Pulse was one of those safe spaces. And when it was invaded, I think that's why it resonated with so many people around the country and around the globe. And I do believe that the grooming rhetoric, the pedophilia rhetoric, this insinuation that LGBTQ people by existing are dangerous to others does create the kind of climate that leads to violence. People who use it know that. The governor's office knew that that could be an eventual result, and instead they chose to weaponize that language to stir up a frenzy to justify discrimination and bigotry against LGBTQ people because they were looking to score cheap political points. It's scary for me. It's scary for me to think that LGBTQ young people in our community are going to face the kind of climate that this reckless governor has now created. And it scares me that this is now having ripple effects across the country and that LGBTQ young people in the United States are going to feel the repercussions of this governor's political ambitions.
So, Anna, we've talked before about the perennial weakness of Democrats in Florida and nationally. Why are Democrats so bad at fighting back against these phony culture wars? Shouldn't your party be hitting back harder? I know Nikki Fried, one of the Democratic candidates for governor, did call DeSantis a dictator. But is that enough when you look at overall the kind of sheer tide of stuff that's coming in our direction?
I think we need to be really intentional and not only responding to the demonization of our peers, responding to what is a constant dunking on marginalized communities, but also pivoting to the solutions that we as Democrats are bringing forth. I want to see an even playing field for every business, small and large, I also want to ensure that everyone pays their taxes and those tax dollars go to direct services to make sure that collective prosperity can be shared and felt by every Floridian. But these are topics that can be a little complicated, and we have to be able to break it down for folks in a way that they can understand and help them realize that when you vote Democrat, you're not going to get chaos. You're going to get problem solving. But I think when we get so caught up in these culture wars ourselves, we lose sight of what actually matters to everyday people. Because as we navigate these fights, my district cannot afford rent. The property insurance rates are going through the roof, and folks are really struggling to make ends meet. So we have to help them understand that Republicans don't have an interest in your collective prosperity, but we do.
Brandon, in your view, are Democrats doing enough to fight and win the culture wars rather than running away from them? We had Mallory McMorrow, the Michigan state legislator who went viral, hitting back against GOP grooming smears on the show last week. But I feel like the Democrats need thousands more McMorrows at the federal and state levels.
Well, we could certainly use a lot more of Senator McMorrow, and we could use a lot more of Representative Anna Eskamani. I'm not here to diagnose what's going on with national Democratic politics, but I am here to say that it matters who's in these positions. It matters that people like Representative Eskamani are incredible champions, that they consider themselves to be allies and accomplices to marginalized people. It matters when you put working class people in positions of leadership. It really matters when you put people in positions of leadership who have rock solid values, who know that they're going to show up every single day to do the work they were elected to do, not just to earn the next pin on their lapel or, title on their desk. Those things really matter. And I think, it's our responsibility as voters, as constituents, to help elect those folks, to help give them the resources they need to go out and change the world. And then it's our responsibility as advocates. It's my responsibility here at Equality Florida to give cover, to be able to share the stories that humanize these issues, to help us to redirect back to the direct impacts on people so that we aren't hijacked by the assaults on civil rights that we're seeing by the right wing. I have trouble now calling them culture wars. They are assaults on civil rights, so that we're not hijacked by the rhetoric that they're spewing and instead are centering marginalized people who are being harmed.
Very good point. Last quick question to you, Anna Eskamani. We've got 30 seconds left. Is it fair to say that if the Democratic candidate does not defeat Ron DeSantis in the gubernatorial election, he is going to run for president for the GOP side, and he'll probably win that nomination if Donald Trump doesn't?
Absolutely. And that's why all eyes are on Florida. That's why the work of organizations like Equality Florida are so important. And if you are not paying attention to Florida politics, you need to be.